This year, it was down to, there were a couple of guys, and I said the riskiest pick, but the most fun one is Omarion Hampton. Screw it, I'm going with Hampton. Harbaugh and Roman love to run. Not only do they love to run, they love to run when they're getting close. Jim Harbaugh, Joe Ortiz, Greg Roman used a first-round draft pick on a running back. In this economy, what do you think they want to do? You think they want to make Omarion Hampton work? The hell yeah, they do.
And you also didn't even bring up the fact that Najee Harris may or may not be blind. What is he going to do? Is he going to hit the hole via echolocation like a bat? It's like, what?
Daredevil vibe.
What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
We are a little over 2 weeks away from the start of the NFL season and the return of fantasy football season. Theo Greminger, Fantasy Points, School of Scott, Fantasy Football Podcast with Scott Barrett, joined today by Matthew Berry. Big guest today, really fun one. Matthew, let's get it started right off the top. Daniel Jones was named as the starting quarterback in Indianapolis. Did this move surprise you? And who's the biggest fantasy beneficiary of all the Colts skill position players?
The move didn't surprise me. I mean, this was my take, and here's an NFL take, and then we'll get into a fantasy take, right? But the NFL take, when they signed Daniel Jones, I said, this is the dumbest move I've ever seen by the Indianapolis Colts from an NFL perspective. I think it's incredibly stupid because you spent a top 5 overall pick on Anthony Richardson. And what's he played? Like less than 30 games in his NFL career? And I get it. There's bad, not seeing the weak side blitzer and right. I get it. There's bad tape out there. But to me, if you're the Colts, you do one of two things. To me, you say, listen, we drafted this kid for a reason. And so we need him to play every game this year. And one of two things is going to happen. Either at the end of the season, he's going to be good enough where we go, okay, we got our guy. Or he's going to be a disaster. And you're going to lose a lot of games, but then you're going to have a top 5 overall pick, and you can go get a new guy. I made the same argument with my Commanders a couple of years ago, where I said when they signed Jacoby Brissett, I'm like, good Lord help us, Jacoby Brissett had better not see the field. And people were like, well, he's probably better than Sam Howell. I said, I know. That's the issue. I said, we don't know what Sam Howell could be. Sam Howell, at one point when he was a junior at North Carolina, Sam Howell was considered a first-round pick, that kind of level of talent. But and then he dropped because North Carolina fell off, whatever. I've said, we need to have a full season of Sam Howell. And one of two things happens. Either we find out we've got our quarterback of the future, or we suck, and then we can draft a good quarterback, which is what happened. We sucked, and then we got Jayden Daniels. Woohoo! And so, but my point is that my argument about Jacoby Brissett is, am I saying about Daniel Jones? It's like, they're fine. You're not winning a Super Bowl with Daniel Jones. You know what you are? You're losing a wild card game with Daniel Jones. That's the best case scenario here. Maybe you win one. I know he won a playoff game because the defense was terrible, but whatever. You're not winning the Super Bowl with Daniel Jones. You're winning 8 games, and then you're stuck in quarterback no man's land.
No half measures in the NFL.
No, what have you done to the kid who's already been benched twice or whatever? At this point, you're just basically saying okay, Anthony Richardson ain't it. Okay, fine. But then we know Daniel Jones ain't it. Who are we kidding? And so I just think if I'm a Colts fan, it's what are we? So I think it's an unbelievably dumb move by the Colts franchise. Daniel Jones shouldn't even be in the building. But that said, fantasy-wise, I think this is awesome because Daniel Jones is a competent NFL quarterback. He's not great, but he can complete a pass, especially short. I don't think he throws deep anymore. I don't know if he ever threw deep. But I think Josh Downs and Tyler Warren especially, I think those two guys are massive beneficiaries of this move because Daniel Jones can complete a pass, especially short. He's fairly accurate. He's fairly accurate in the middle of the field. And so I think those two guys raise up in the rankings. And I think this helps Jonathan Taylor because while Daniel Jones is actually a threat at the goal line, believe it or not, but he's not Anthony Richardson. And so I do think there'll be, if Daniel Jones plays the whole year, maybe there's 3 to 5 touchdowns that Anthony Richardson might have vultured for Jonathan Taylor that Daniel Jones is not going to. So I actually, fantasy-wise, I think it's a great move. Just NFL-wise, I think it's moronic. That's my take.
And I'm on the Tyler Warren being the biggest beneficiary here. We haven't seen what a elite tight end can do in this offense. They use the excessive draft capital on him, and now we could maybe get the full Tyler Warren experience with some of those manufactured rushing yards. You mentioned Jonathan Taylor and Scott. We had Jared Smola on, and he's talked about these splits where Taylor averaged 22 points per game in games without Richardson, 16.5 points per game in games with Richardson. Do you think that Jonathan Taylor's ADP could creep up a little bit to end the month, or is there another player on Indianapolis maybe you're eyeing?
Yeah, I could for sure see that. I would say Josh Downs really to me is the one who stands out the most. And, we mentioned Tyler Warren, but part of the arrival of Tyler Warren is good news for Josh Downs. I think that leads to more 11 personnel. You keep him on the field. And we saw it last year where, it's hard to say what exactly Daniel Jones is, just because with New York, he literally had like a bottom 3 offensive line, a bottom 3 receiving core every single year of his career. Now, this is a very good offensive line, very good receiving core. But last year with Joe Flacco, who we know is not, a world beater at this stage of his career, 7 games with Joe Flacco last year, Josh Downs averaged 8.1 catchable targets per game. That would have ranked top 3, 15.5 fantasy points per game. That was mid-range wide receiver 2 levels. And then with Anthony Richardson, he was just dead. 4.3 catchable targets per game, 12.2 fantasy points per game. By threat rate, which is basically target share, only counting plays you're on the field, it was one of the top 5 best seasons in fantasy points data history. I just love Josh Downs. I think he's a really talented player. And I think, don't think Daniel Jones is, maybe he shouldn't even be a starter, but he's just a massive upgrade from Anthony Richardson, who just had the worst completion rate, the fewest completions per game of any quarterback since Tim Tebow back in 2011.
Oh, yeah, disaster. I'll real quickly, Theo, just to comment on 2 quick things you said. Just 2 random things. You mentioned you had Jared Smola on this podcast recently.
Yes.
I've never met him or talked to him. I really like him. I think he does really, really good work, just generally speaking. Just, I try to keep my eye on like just a bunch of people in the industry, and I think Jared just does really good work. So just want to give him a shout out there.
Awesome.
And the other thing I'll say is in terms of, getting ready to, to feel the or to see the Tyler Warren experience, right? I think that's what you said. Like we're getting ready to, experience Tyler Warren. You know who else is ready to experience Tyler Warren? The 2 of you, because who has him in our Dynasty League? You're looking at him right here.
Yes, absolutely. I remember that one. You were enthusiastically drafting him. You took him very early in that one. This could end up being a big payoff. That's a tight end premium Dynasty League, and Matthew, you got him pretty early. I think it's going to pay off for you this year, and I think he's going to start steaming up towards the end of the month. We're already seeing a lot of enthusiasm for him in high stakes drafts. But sort of the story of the last few weeks.
Because, by the way, the other thing is, let's detour for you 1 second, Theo. Because our godforsaken league that Scott Barrett founded, our godforsaken league, people don't understand the animals that we are in this league because we have to draft. And no one understands this. Every time I explain it to people, no one understands it. Like, why do you do that? And I'm like, well, Scott Barrett set it up this way. But in this league, Theo, that you and I and Scott are in, that Scott set up, we have to draft before the NFL draft. So I didn't know where Tyler Warren was going to land. I thought he would, I thought he would have higher draft capital than Colston Loveland, and so you just don't know where anyone's going to land. So you're sort of picking blindly. You're picking on talent, obviously, but as we all know, fantasy production comes from both talent and opportunity. So so I was disappointed when the Bears didn't take him and he ended up going to the Colts, and I thought it was going to be Richardson, but now I'm happy. And then you and I made a trade because we couldn't believe Quinshon Judkins fell the way he did. And I was super excited. You got a good price for me. But I was happy to get Judkins, I think, at the top of the 2nd round, which I thought was crazy. And then he goes to Cleveland. I'm like, I'm excited. Then he gets in trouble with the law and I'm bummed, but now I'm excited again. So it's been a roller coaster of emotions this offseason in our league. For me.
I got to give the listeners at home a peek behind the curtain. But first, I just need to pat myself on the back. We won last year.
You guys did a great team.
We traded our first round pick. So our first pick in this draft before the NFL draft was the 212. We took RJ Harvey. Awesome pick by us. But Theo had a bunch of first and second round picks. He got Ted McMillan, Travis Hunter, Colston Loveland, and Matthew Golden. So he's stacked. But this is the coolest thing in the world to me is I have my own dynasty league and Matthew Berry is in it. And not only is Matthew Berry in it, but he gives an F so much. He is like the most hyper competitive person on the planet. And for those keeping score at home, I think you and I are the only teams with multiple trophies, multiple championships. Yep. So shout out to both of us.
Yeah, let's hear it for us. I was for the first 4 years in the league. I won 2 titles in the finals one other year where I lost a heartbreaker to Graham Barfield because stupid AJ Dillon got hurt and Aaron Jones got it was that Sunday night game against the Vikings where like they decided they put loose single coverage on Devontae Adams. I was like something like, or maybe it was a Monday night game, but I was literally up like 55 points on Graham and I was done. And he had just Adams and Aaron Jones. It was just like, Graham was already like, congratulations, blah, blah, blah. Like, it was like, even if one of them has a career game, like both of them would need to have the greatest games of their lives for Graham to beat me. And they did. And like Jones had a late, a last second bullshit, 60-yard touchdown run. And Graham ended up beating me by 1 point. Not that but I'm definitely over it. I'm definitely not bitter about it. I don't think about it like every night crying myself to sleep. But yeah, no, I won I finals once, most points once, and two of the first 4 titles, I think, semifinals one of those years as well. So I'm now in full rebuilding though. I had to, built it up. We won it, tearing it down, and now we're back up on the backs of Tyler Warren. You took over a team, Theo, that was decimated, and so you had the number 1 pick, but you've done a good job. You did a really good job of doing exactly what a good dynasty manager should do when they have a team that needs help, which is like you traded what few assets you had. You traded down in the draft. You got yourself more picks, more opportunities to hit on. And so, you crushed the draft. You had a really good draft.
I appreciate that. That went really well. That was where I podcasted with Davis Maddock on my Dynasty show, Dynasty Life, where we talked about the trade where I traded the 101. Davis gave me the 104, the 105, 108, turned it into a bunch of guys. So we have a really, really fun league. And I'm going to try to get you guys next couple of years.
I think you will. If I can give one piece of advice to anyone out there thinking of starting a dynasty league, and then we'll get back to your show, I promise. But if I can give one piece of advice to anyone starting a dynasty league, it's to not have Davis Maddock in the league. Now, I love Davis. Davis worked his ass off. He's a very smart fantasy football analyst. Great kid. Love Davis. Absolutely drives me nuts in our league because and I'm sure he would say the same about me, but the way he values players is so insanely different from me. Like there are trades that happen in our league or moves that happen in my league where I'm just like, that's not what I wouldn't have done that, but I get it. You know what I mean? But the trade he made with you, I get it. Ashton Genty, awesome, right? But like to trade 104, 105, and 108, right? To trade 3 top 8 picks, like he's a running back. I get it. He's the next Saquon, blah, blah, blah. It's a running back in Dynasty to trade 3 top, and who did you turn that into? You turned that into, Hunter was one of them.
Hunter, Ted McMillan, and then Colston Loveland fell at a really nice price. So
in a tight end premium league.
Tight end premium. Yep. I ran pure in that one. So big shout out to you, Davis Maddock. And it was a very on-brand one for you. You got your Ashton Genty, but you caused Matthew Berry to be all upset on our podcast, which is turning into an awesome content here.
Right. But then he'll offer me a trade where he'll be like, hey, I've got some number 1 picks. I'm looking for some veteran wide receiver help. You know what I mean? And or whatever. For a year, I remember this is, back in the Buffalo Bills days. This is 2 years ago. He had Gabe Davis, and I like Gabe Davis. I'm like, hey, I need some little more wide receiver depth. What do you want for Gabe Davis? First round pick. Come on. What are we doing here? Yeah. What are we doing? I'm and I'm rebuilding, right? So last year, before he fell off the cliff, I was shopping Cooper Kupp. I think he offered me a late 3rd. I'm like, Come on.
Yeah, come on, Davis.
Again, this is before Cooper Kupp fell off the, I mean, he was brutal down the stretch. So ultimately, props to Davis. He avoided that landmine there. But like, anyway, we just value David. I think he's a great kid. I think he does really smart work. He's good on social. Nothing bad to say about him as a person or even as an analyst. But just in the league, in our specific dynasty league, in the settings in our dynasty league, him and I see players entirely differently in terms of how we when we try to negotiate trades. That's all I'll say.
I will say in Dynasty, way more than any other format, you could have trades that just really upset the competitive nature and balance of the league. And so the number one biggest rule of advice my partner in this league, TJ Calkins, would give anyone playing Dynasty is to make friends with everyone in the league and talk with them constantly, because you could have brilliant, great analysts who are just like, I am the world's biggest Kenneth Walker fan, and I will give you an extra first and a second more than anyone else on the planet would give for Kenneth Walker. And then you take that trade and then you talk to someone else, and there's going to be a player where they're sort of irrational about, and then you make that trade and you win that trade. And so number one rule of advice for sure is just be in constant communication with everyone, spam out trade offers. Huge piece of advice there. And if you do have someone who is maybe not that smart in your league, we have only brilliant analysts in this league, but other rule of advice is find the dumbest person in your league and then just trade with them until there's nothing good left on their roster. But that's no fun for the rest of the league.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say about Dynasty is that I feel like it is, listen, fantasy football, it's a game. Football is a game, as my friend Joe Bryant always likes to say, it's a game played with a leather ball that's in an oblong shape. Weird stuff happens, right? And so fantasy football, just season long, is hard enough. And then you get into Dynasty, right? I mean, like, joking about the Gabe Davis thing that we were talking about, but like 2.5 years ago, Gabe Davis was like, this rising young superstar wide receiver, that had all the physical traits, and he's on the Bills, and now he's out of football. We're waiting for him to sign somewhere, and same with Cooper Kupp. Like, we'll see what he does in Seattle this year, but he's 2 years removed from being like the best wide receiver in football, like a couple years removed from being the best wide receiver in football. And he was unusable down the stretch last year. So it's just always, I'm in a different dynasty league where I was trying to forget what the exact point, but it's a super flex league, and a guy was trading me. He needed Roethlisberger. This is how long ago this was. He just needed a quarterback to make a playoff push. So I had Roethlisberger. So I traded him Roethlisberger and for Jared Goff, who at the time was sort of like a warm body. This is back when Lions had no wins and Goff wasn't, anything. And so we're going back and forth. And I said, there were a couple other pieces in it. Like, he had Dalvin Cook and I had Madison. So I threw him Madison as a backup. And I said, hey, I could use a tight end. Will you give me Freiermuth? He's like, no, I need Freiermuth. He goes, but he's like, I'm like, well, I need another player. Just give me a throw in. And he's just like, all right, well, how about this guy? I mean, I know he's a 4th round rookie, but maybe he'll show something. I'm like, sure. And it was Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's literally this was first part of his rookie year before he'd done anything. But anyway, me and my buddy, also named Scott, that I'm in this dynasty league, we joke about the fact that Amon-Ra St. Brown was a throw-in that he gave because he didn't want to give up Freiermuth. And I begrudgingly took because I just wanted to get the deal done. And I wanted to get something for Roethlisberger. And then, of course, Amon-Ra has been, awesome ever since. So you just, I don't want to say you never know with Dynasty, like talent is talent. And there's a lot of theories and strategy around Dynasty, but it is one of those things where player value fluctuates so much from year to year, situation to situation, health to health. And then you get into the idea of how people play fantasy Dynasty differently in terms of how they value players, how they value picks, how they value, whether they're going for it, whether they're not going for it. There's a couple teams in our league, Scott, and you guys, neither of you are either of these teams, but there are a couple teams in our league that I don't totally understand what they're doing. And by that, I mean, I feel like in fantasy, you need to be doing one of two things. You either need to be going for the title or tanking. And again, we have a competitive league. Everyone starts a legit lineup and everything like that. But my point is you either need to be, I am playing for next year or I'm playing for this year. And
so I completely agree with
there's
this.
nothing worse than being fifth in a dynasty league.
You were just talking about this with the Colts, and I think it's the same thing. Is there's no half measures. Like the goal in the NFL should be the 1 out of 32 outcome of winning the Super Bowl. That's just not the case. So many owners are just content to just not be terrible, or to just, I don't know what the Bengals are doing, but in Dynasty especially, it's like you need to be going for the championship, or you need to be, I think, like pretty much full on tanking or playing for 2 or 3 years from now, because that's where all the alpha is. That's where all the edge is. And if you're not doing that, you're just kind of, there's nothing worse than stuck in like the middle purgatory, like my Giants have been in for, there's no such thing as a halfway tank. Just go all in. I also wanted to point out here what makes Matthew Berry is like, look how much he loves fantasy football. Like, you're on TV constantly. You have to write these articles. You own your own website, and you just love, you make the time for Scott Barrett's Dynasty League. You put in the effort, you care. And I think that's really what makes you, Mr. Fantasy Football.
Well, I appreciate that. I truly do. Obviously it's a love, but the other thing is that I'm so grateful for my success. It's been really lucky. It's been a blessed kind of journey. But if there's, quote, one downside of me getting to whatever level it is that I'm at, it's that I can't take a league off. You know what I mean? Because everyone, and I'm sure this happens with you guys as well, because they know what you guys do for a living, but every league I'm in, how'd Matthew Berry do? Who'd he draft? Even if they don't respect me, even if they don't like me, like, I'll show up to a draft and people will have my rankings there. You know what I mean? Like, whether it's an industry draft or whatever. And like, we all do Scott Fishbowl, right? And so like, I'll have people commenting, I'll see, people commenting on my draft. Like, I've had people comment like that I take too long to draft. Why is Matthew Berry taking that long? Matthew Berry should know. You know what I mean? Like, Matthew Berry has a life. Sorry. Sorry, I'm not just sitting by my computer waiting for, on a slow draft in July. But anyway, my point is that, like, I'll give you a quick story. I have a bunch of kids, and I've written about this before, but like, when my son was like 6 or 7, like, I have 3 boys, but when my youngest, he's now 21, he's a junior at Alabama, but he was probably like 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there. Like, we did a friends and family league. Like, we wanted to do like a father-son kind of, fantasy football league. So a bunch of my kids' friends, their dads, we had like an 8-person league where and I printed out like a bunch of like cheat sheets and handed them out to all the kids. And they just went down the sheet and just sort of like, and like Daniel Jones, who's starting quarterback for the Giants, went like 3rd overall because we're in Connecticut. You know what I mean? Like, and the kids had heard of Daniel Jones. Like, so it's like, it's one of those leagues, right? And so it's like, it's a goofy league, and all the dads are sitting around, we're drinking beer, and the kids are like, they're picking kickers, with a 3rd pick, and like, whatever. Like, there's no theory or anything like that. It's just, just something fun to do. And which point, after we're draft, Connor's my son, and Connor turns to me, goes, "How'd I do?" And I'm like, "Oh, kid, you did great. I love our team, whatever." And I'm pumped. He goes, "Well, listen, you're my partner now, right? So that means we're going to win, right?" Like, oh, now I gotta try in this stupid 8-person father-son league because Connor's like, "Well, my dad's Matthew Berry." You know what I mean? Like, well, we have to win this league, right? We're going to win, right?
You got to put the time in on that one for sure.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, and then I started working the waiver wire and grinding a couple of 8-year-old kids, and, we won the league, right? Whatever. It is what it is. I had to win the league.
One player that's steaming up big time in all formats, Dynasty, at this point, I think we're looking at a top 5 player in terms of trade equity, trade value. And in redraft, we're starting to see this player steaming up into round 3 after sort of living in round 5 for a good push in the summer. It's TreVeyon Henderson. Matthew, you talked about like Amon-Ra St. Brown, where he ends up in Detroit, gets featured over that second half of the season. With TreVeyon Henderson, it looks like New England might be featuring him from the get-go. They've mentioned him being one of their better downfield threats as a pass catcher, big-time explosive ability, premium draft capital, and on a team that needs a offensive focal point to complement Drake May. What's your enthusiasm level for TreVeyon Henderson having a big-time rookie season? Where are you comfortable drafting him?
I'm buying the hype. I think he's in the kind of 5th, 6th round. I just made him running back 20 in my most recent rankings update as well. Look, the thing is that at Ohio State, they still babied him a little bit. Like he's never been like a true workhorse back. Now he doesn't need to be. Like I think a good comp for him is Jahmyr Gibbs' rookie year.
That's what
like is actually, like
That's
just like I think he's 13 to 15 touches a game. But I think that's going to be enough. Like he's not going to be a volume guy. He's going to be a guy that they're going to try to break for the big play. They're going to use him in the passing game. They're going to try to get him in space and use his speed. And we've seen this. Josh McDaniels, 6 out of the last 8 years. We actually talked about TreVeyon Henderson today on the show, on my show, Fantasy Football Happy Hour. 6 out of the 8 years that 6 out of the last 8 years, I should say, 6 out of the last 8 years that Josh McDaniels has either been a head coach or offense coordinator, his teams have been top 5 in the NFL in running back target share, which is a stat which tells you something you already know. Josh McDaniels likes to throw to his running back, right? And so the other thing is, and I'm Theo and Scott, I'm curious how you guys think, because you guys are both really smart. You're both very stat heavy. You're both very comfortable, talking about this. But one thing that I think gets lost in fantasy analysis in general is that I think people forget that we're dealing with human beings, that too often in the fantasy football analysis industry, we're all too busy trying to out impress each other. Oh yeah, well, his yards per route run, and like everyone's just trying to like out data each other and out metric each other, or then on the other side, the out X and O people. And there's value to both significantly. There's no question about that. But I think that one thing that gets lost in fantasy analysis is that we're talking about human beings. Is that human football players and coaches and general managers, just like all of us, have egos, have tempers, have emotions. They get sad, they get depressed, they get happy, they get excited. And so that oftentimes I think we overcomplicate stuff. And so I just sort of think forget every stat, forget everything else. And Theo, you sort of referenced this in one way, but it's basically like you're Josh McDaniels. You just showed up and you're like, hey man, you've been out of football for a year. You get thrown a lifeline by Vrabel to be the offense coordinator. You come to a team in New England that doesn't have a lot. And your job, offensive genius, Tom Brady's offense coordinator, was it McDaniels or was it just all Brady? Didn't work out in Las Vegas. Didn't work out in Denver. The only place it's worked out is when Tom Brady's been your quarterback, blah, 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 blah. All right, Josh McDaniels, let's see what you can do. Here's what you have to work with. Figure out Kayshon Boutte. What do you think he's going to do? What do you think Josh McDaniels is sitting there doing, going, all right, what have I got to work with? Oh, that kid's different. We don't have much here, but that kid is different. Let me figure out a way to make that guy awesome. Forget every other stat. Just that. Don't you think? I've met Josh McDaniels once for 30 seconds. I couldn't tell you I know him. But I'm just thinking, if I'm Josh McDaniels, he's not stupid. You think he doesn't know this? You don't think he doesn't know, it's got to work in New England, or, who knows? He was out of football for a year, or, he was out of football, after he left the Raiders until this gig. And
yeah, I mean, self-preservation, getting your best guys the ball. Henderson had 11 plays from scrimmage at Ohio State that went for 50 yards or more. I mean, Scott, in my bold predictions article that should be up at Fantasy Points by the time this podcast airs, I said that I think TreVeyon Henderson is going to be top 3 in receptions at the running back position. Then you factor in the mobility of Drake May, opening up sort of big run lanes for Henderson. Even if it's like Matthew talked about, sharing the touches on the rushing attempts with Ramondre Stevenson, those could still be really exciting ones. Where are you moving him up to? I know you've been going through a lot with TreVeyon Henderson these last 2 weeks.
Was that for me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to give you your flowers first. For those who don't know, Theo isn't just a pretty face and the co-host of School of Scott. He's a legendary high-stakes fantasy football player. And there are a number of things he's been right on that I've been wrong about this preseason. So to give you your flowers, dead right about Braylon Allen, dead right about, it looks like Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, and TreVeyon Henderson was another one. We were butting heads on TreVeyon Henderson versus Bucky Irving in Dynasty. I don't know that I still kind of want to not give that up, but yeah, I mean, you called it. You're like, this is a player who's going to skyrocket up rankings by September. He's going to be a 4th round pick, whatever. And it's really headed that way. I've been high on him the whole way. I've had him as a target.
Where do you have him? So where do you have him ranked?
I started off very high, RB 18. Now he's RB 16.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you're higher than me. Yeah.
He's a big target. So I didn't even move him up that much, but my subscribers keep asking RJ Harvey or TreVeyon Henderson, because you see all this buzz about TreVeyon Henderson.
TreVeyon Henderson.
I'm still team RJ Harvey here. And it's like, what is really happening to drive him up? A special teams touchdown in preseason. That's not something to really bank on. Like, no player since Devin Hester, I feel like, should be projected for more than 9 special teams fantasy points heading into a season. And then he had a rushing touchdown. Okay. But week 1, he also had 1 carry versus Ramondre Stevenson's 8. We know Josh McDaniels' history. I think you nailed it. He's basically Jahmyr Gibbs, where he has to be like top 5 in efficiency, top 5 in fantasy points over expectation. To me, I see RJ Harvey, who, another really special, hyper efficient freak coming out of college, way more likely to get this workhorse volume. And I think a much more valuable role in an offense that has historically been great for running backs. And so maybe this is just stubbornness. Bottom line is, I love both guys. You could draft both guys. But I'm still unwilling to push him above Harvey. What do you think, Theo? What do you think, Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from. I get it. I think that the RJ Harvey narrative also involves him catching a lot of passes. Denver has been top 5 in targets to the running back for the last 2 seasons. They were number 1 2 seasons ago. So that sort of lines up with Harvey.
I mean, so hold on. He's jumped up in what, FFPC? How many rounds, Theo?
So I'd say RJ Harvey consistently will be a 5th round pick in the FFPC NFFC draft.
That's lower than where I have it, but just like the narratives of what we're talking about is like, preseason just like philosophically doesn't really matter to me.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you this. Take team out of it.
Yeah.
Just TreVeyon in our Dynasty league, back to our Dynasty league. In our Dynasty league, where we're not allowed to draft, but we have to draft before the NFL draft, before you find out landing spot. Pretty sure TreVeyon Henderson went like 6 or 7 spots ahead of RJ Harvey.
RJ Harvey was 212. Henderson was probably 1st round.
Henderson was right alongside Colston Loveland. I remember that one because I tried to maneuver. Matthew, you nailed it. I'll add in one more thing. Scott, where would you put Henderson if he was on Denver? He'd be a 2nd round pick in every single format.
Yeah.
So my point is that all you're doing, like the only argument for Harvey over Henderson, because I think we all agree, and I think the NFL agrees, he's a more talented running back. The only argument for Harvey is environment. And I think that there is a scenario where for sure Denver's a better offense. Harvey gets a big role and absolutely crushes. And maybe he's Sean Payton's Alvin Kamara, to just use a kind of, lazy comparison. But there's also a scenario where Sean Payton has had many, many years where he's had multiple running backs touch the ball 100 times, where RJ Harvey, a rookie, splits some of the receiving work with Jaleel McLaughlin, who they also like, where J.K. Dobbins gets the short yardage stuff and the goal line work, where you've got a mobile quarterback in Bo Nix that maybe they're more willing to run at the goal line than Drake May, where they play in a division where they've got to face the Chiefs and the Chargers and the Raiders, whatever, but it's a much tougher division than what the Patriots are going to play in. And I think you can also make an argument that because Denver's defense is so good, that it's going to be lower scoring environments. And it's not going to be shootouts. And you could see some scenarios where the Patriots are just having to be in, total fuck it mode because, they're just not where they need to be and they're down. And so anyway, I'm just saying, like, that's the only argument for Harvey over Henderson is environment. And I'd argue there's a lot of variables to that environment where it could absolutely go right for Harvey, but there's also a scenario where he's part of a 3-headed committee.
Just for clarity, just for the readers and subscribers, pre-draft, I had it TreVeyon Henderson RB4, RJ Harvey RB5, which was, really high on Harvey pre-draft compared to everyone else. In the actual draft, it goes TreVeyon Henderson, RB4, RJ Harvey, RB5, both in round 2. And in my current rankings, I have RJ Harvey, RB15, TreVeyon Henderson, RB16. So again, really, really tight, but both are for sure massive targets for me. So maybe we're just splitting hairs a little bit, but yeah, I see what you're saying. I still think just projecting touches. I mean, projecting
Denver's
XFC,
a better team. It's a good,
Yeah.
it's a better offensive.
Yeah.
Denver's a better team. It's just whether it's just whether that translate. I mean, how many times have we said, we've seen players that we think are going to be on, bad team, like whatever. No one liked Brock Bowers last year because he was going to the Raiders with a bad quarterback, target competition in Devonta Adams and Jacoby Myers. And we're like, yeah, we know he's a special talent, but like, oh, what a brutal environment. And, talent wins out more often than not.
I will say being a pass catching specialist is actually good when you're on a bad team. And one of New England's beat writers, I can't remember his name. He writes for patriots.com. I feel like those guys, the team beats have better sources and access to coaches, but he said he thought TreVeyon Henderson was the best deep threat on the team.
Yeah. It's scary. It's absolutely
that keeps
scary.
me up at night.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Henderson, he's steaming up. One player who's already been there and we've been extremely high on, and Matthew, you've been extremely high on, Omarion Hampton. Scott and I drafted an FFPC main event team. We drafted Hampton in the 3rd round. And we're also going to be drafting another FFPC main event team. You can check that out on Fantasy Points YouTube. We're going to stream that one live. And that's going to be on the Fantasy Football Daily podcast. Make sure you subscribe to that one. But Matthew, you've been all over Omarion Hampton. Talk about your enthusiasm for him. Talk about offensive environments. They certainly like to run the ball a little bit in LA.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I announced him as my ride or die. Little bit of a risky pick, but last year I really wanted to make Jayden Daniels my ride or die. I wanted to make Jayden Daniels my ride or die. And I was just like, boy, everyone's going to think I'm a homer and rookie quarterback. Boy, that's risky. Screw it. I'll go with the safe pick, Kyler Murray. And obviously that's the first ride or die that's blown up on my face in quite some time. And so this year, it was down to, there were a couple of guys and I said the riskiest pick, but the most fun one is Omarion Hampton. Screw it. I'm going with Hampton because I should have done the quote risky pick last year and I didn't. Like the obvious stuff, right, is Harbaugh and Roman love to run. That like not only they love to run, they love to run when they get in close. Like last year, they were top 6 in terms of running back rushing attempts inside the 5-yard line. That was with the J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards of the world, right? And so it's an offense that is going to be run very, very run heavy. Now the and by the way, I also made this call before the Rashawn Slater injury, but I'm still sticking by it. Like I think they'll figure it out. They'll run to the right side more. The anti-argument for Hampton, there's 2 anti-arguments for Hampton. One is Najee Harris. Oh, it's going to be committee. Yeah, maybe. But again, I just go back to think logically. Forget stats, blah, blah, forget all that stuff. Just think stats. Najee Harris is on a 1-year prove-it deal. Jim Harbaugh, Joe Ortiz, Greg Roman used a first-round draft pick on a running back in this economy. What do you think they want to do? You think they want to make Omarion Hampton work? The hell yeah, they do. Like you don't draft a first-round running back in today's day and age unless you plan on making the most of that first-round draft pick. Okay. And so I think just, that speaks volumes. The other anti-argument is like, oh, Greg Roman doesn't throw to running backs. That, he's just not going to be involved in the passing game, that it's really going to be a first. And the truth is that is true. But generally speaking, his offenses have had Lamar Jackson, Tyrod Taylor, guys that don't really throw to their running backs because they can tuck it and run. Herbert's mobile, but he ain't those guys. You think about Austin Eckler and all the great years he had. Like when Herbert has had a good pass catching running back, he has no problem peppering that running back. He's not scared to check it down. It's not like, yeah, you're right. Sorry, he didn't feed Kamani Vidal last year or J.K. Dobbins. But, so Omarion Hampton is a pro-ready prospect. He's a great pass catcher. He is proficient in pass protection. He doesn't need to come off the field and third down. I think that will be a part of his game. look, I'm not saying he's going to be Chris McCaffrey, but do I think he can get 35 receptions this year? I do.
Yeah, I
would like to jump in real quick. I watched every post-draft press conference every year. I love it. It's like a staple part of my process. The Chargers post-draft press would have you dismiss both of these concerns fairly easily. They asked Harbaugh about Najee Harris, and it was like he forgot he was even on the team. The way he talked about Omarion Hampton. And yeah, the Greg Roman's history of not targeting pass catchers, he went out of his way multiple times to praise Hampton as a pass catcher, and the fact that he was a multi-dimensional, every down, do it all running back, really skilled as a pass catcher, highlighting his yards per route run, whatever. And it seemed like that's something they were looking for, and they got it because, I saw the same thing in his profile. And you also didn't even bring up the fact that Najee Harris may or may not be blind. What is he going to do? Is he going to hit the hole via echolocation like a bat? It's like what?
Daredevil vibes.
So this is your ride or die. This is
my ride or die. Here's the other thing. I'll give you one other piece of information. So I'm on Football Night in America, which is the Sunday night pregame show on NBC. It's part of what I do for NBC. And so we had the Hall of Fame game, the preseason Hall of Fame game, and that's where I announced my ride or die. So, but we go there. You go there like the day before, and then you talk to people, and we're on the field whatever. The game starts at 8. Our show is on at 7. We're on the field at 4. We do some rehearsals, we do some mic checks, whole thing, and the players are out there warming up and stretching. And so, I'm friendly with everyone on the cast. It's a great cast, or they're incredibly kind to me. But Devin McCourty I'm probably closest to Devin McCourty of all the people on the show. And so Devin and I, we hang out, and I'm like, Devin, let me just walk with you, because everyone knows Devin. And by the way, if you've ever met Devin, he's just awesome. He's an awesome human being, easy to talk to. Everyone loves Devin. And so we just walk around, and we're talking to a bunch of different people. And I ended up I talked to Goff and Gibbs, and I talked to some of the Lions guys. But I also talked to a bunch of Chargers players, including a lot of defensive players, because they all know Devin, and they all come up to him. And so everyone we talked to, I was just like, and again, this is 4:00. They're in sweats. They're, no cameras around, no microphones. This is just, BSing. This is all off the record stuff. And I would ask each of them, I said, hey, what do you think of Hampton? What do you think of the kid? And they were like, they gave me a look like, dude, he's the real deal. They said to me, and I said this on the thing, one of the guys just said, I hate tackling that kid. Man, he runs hard in practice. We're it's practice, and boom. And you can tell, first round talent. They were all just he is the real deal. I am glad I do not have to play against him in the regular season, because he is awesome. All the defensive players were and they would tell you, you'd ask about other players, and and then someone would be he's fine or whatever. What do you think about this player on another team? That guy's soft, whatever. They're honest with you. They're especially honest with, So to a man, the Charger, for whatever it's worth, the guys that are facing him every day in practice are he is the real effing deal.
Yeah, it's we're extremely high on Omarion Hampton in redraft and through the roof in Dynasty. And when we think about Jim Hart, I understand a lot of the anti-Omarion Hampton takes are Greg Roman's going to work in a second back. Both of you sort of dispelled that notion. It's also Jim Harbaugh. Who do we associate with him? His best teams at Michigan, Blake Corum, bell cow running back. His best teams in San Francisco, Frank Gore, bell cow running back. He's got kind of an MO here. This could be his bell cow running back. And I did a show earlier this year with, I think it was John Daigle, and we tried to project the 2026 first round. And we both wanted to cram Omarion Hampton in the 2026 first round of redraft, because what could be, guys? He could be this bell cow running back, headed in the right direction. Matthew, got to ask you about your Commanders.
They also run enough. Theo, they also run enough that that's baked into it. Again, he can be 70-30 on the Chargers, and Jim Harbaugh is a lot different than 90% on some pass happy team, right? I mean, it's just it's or even 50-50 on the Chargers is different than 70-30 on some pass happy team. They're gonna run the ball a ton, and especially when they're in close as well. So I'm incredibly high on Omarion Hampton. I was really upset. Scott, explain this one to me, because in our Dynasty League, I had the third pick. Again, I'm rebuilding. Theo had the first pick. He traded it away to Davis, as we talked about. Davis takes Ashton Genty, makes sense. Graham has the second pick, Graham Barfield, the great Graham Barfield. And I'm like, well, Graham's going to take Cam Ward. It's a super flex. It's a super flex tight end premium dynasty. And Cam Ward was really the only, viable quarterback this year. And if you look at Graham's roster, it's a disaster. It's awful. And I'm just like, well, he needs a quarterback. Graham's going to take Cam Ward, and I'm going to get Omarion Hampton. And then Graham takes Omarion Hampton. Bastard. That bastard Graham Barfield.
Well, don't forget, Graham is our resident running back guru. He does his study every year where he watches the film, and he knows he's good. He knows he's good.
I know. I was just hoping he would, draft Cam Ward. Graham's terrific. I'll talk. I think Graham does fantastic work. I'm a big fan of Graham. He's really, really good at his job and does a great job for you guys. Has for a long time.
Big shout out, Graham Barfield. I got to ask you about your Commanders. Is this the year that Jayden Daniels finishes as the QB1 overall and potentially wins the MVP?
I think it's within the realm of possibility. I mean, listen, you can see my shirt, listen, let's be clear. I thought you were going to ask me about Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. But yes, finishing as the number one quarterback in fantasy, very much within the range of possibilities for Jayden Daniels. I think certainly MVP is within the range of possibilities. The weird thing is that I think, look, second year in the league, second year in the offense, they need to get Terry McLaurin back, of course, but adding Deebo Samuel, adding Laramie Tunsil, they've done a nice job this offseason. But I do think, I weirdly think as a Commanders fan, I think the Commanders are going to be a better NFL team than they were last year with a worse record, if that makes any sense. Because last year, everything that could go right for the Commanders did. What was it, something like 6 games they won on the last possession, something like that, and the Hail Mary, the game against the Eagles, on and on. The game against Cincinnati, everything that could go right for them did. They stayed relatively healthy. They've got a tougher schedule this year. They've got 8 primetime games. The league is now, last year they're like, oh, let's see what the Rook has. But every team that has to play the Commanders this year has been like, oh, 5 is coming. They have spent the whole offseason studying Kingsbury's offense, studying Jayden Daniels. So they're going to have to come up with more wrinkles. So it's going to be tougher, man. So listen, I love Jayden. I think it's definitely within the realm of possibility. I'm at QB3. I'm sure that's around where you guys have him as well. But certainly number one quarterback in fantasy, very much within the realm of possibility. And MVP would be amazing, but I'd prefer a Super Bowl.
I've got him QB1, Matthew.
Yeah,
no one's going to call you a homer.
Oh.
I know your heart wants to do it. Just do it.
I've thought about it. I might. I mean, listen, I'm fairly chalk. I have Allen at 1, Jackson at 2, Jayden at 3, Hurts at 4, Burrow at 5, which I think is fairly chalk for the industry.
Yeah, and chalking makes sense. And Scott and I, we've been on this Jayden Daniels train. Scott and I are going to be doing a bold predictions episode next episode. Graham Barfield, Ryan Heath joining us. That should be a lot of fun. Scott will have some really good ones for that one.
How'd you get Ryan Heath?
We have an in with him, Matthew.
Oh,
we
nice.
can get him on a lot of shows. It's a nice thing. Wide receiver 1, Jamar Chase, chalk 101 in almost every format. Makes sense. If Jamar Chase doesn't finish as the wide receiver 1 this year, then who finishes as the wide receiver 1 this year? Who's your wide receiver 2 and the player you think has the most upside?
I have Jefferson at 2. I have CeeDee Lamb at 3. But if you want sort of a quote unquote bold prediction, give me somebody outside the obvious that could finish as the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy. How about Nico Collins? Nico Collins over the last 2 years, there's 22 games in which he's played more than I think 70% of the snaps. And in those games, he's basically second in fantasy points per game. Not a lot of target competition. I'm not worried about Christian Kirk. Obviously, no Tank Dell, no Stephon Diggs. I think they're going to be more pass heavy this year. I think partially because they want to. Last year, it's one of the reasons why they changed offense coordinators, because they were too run heavy. And number 2 is because I don't know that they're going to be able to run the ball. Joe Nixon's still dealing with the ankle injury that they have. We don't really know what we have in Nick Chubb. Woody Marks, okay, fine. I heard that, I heard a rumor that Houston was one of the teams that, Washington called to say like, yo, you interested in Brian Robinson? And, they were like, nah. So who knows, it would make sense that, that would be a good spot for him, I think. But and who knows if that rumor was true? It wasn't a great source that I got that from, but I think they're going to throw I think Nico Collins is an alpha wide receiver who has produced every time he's gotten an opportunity. It's just been health and Houston and everything like that. But like, he was actually one of my ride or die finalists for ride or die. It was basically him or Omarion Hampton, because my argument was going to be the same argument that I made for Amon-Ra St. Brown when he was my ride or die 2 years ago. I'm like, this is a guy that's being drafted in the second round. When I did Amon-Ra, he was sort of like middle to late second round. Nico's more at the 1-2 turn at this point. He's kind of risen up a little bit. When I was doing this, it was sort of middle of second round, and now he's more kind of at the 1-2 turn. But my argument was going to be like, this guy is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Like, he's in the same class as the Jeffersons and the Lambs, just no one talks about him like that. They think of him as like a tier below, and I disagree. And I think there's going to be a season where he puts it all together, and I think there's a chance that this is the season that he does that.
Scott, you made the Julio Jones comparison with Nico Collins as sort of what a peak Nico Collins season could look like. Look at the past, look at some of the Julio Jones. Are you getting those vibes this year, Scott?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a team that could lead the league in pass attempts. Really good vibes I'm getting from my sources out in Houston. But the question you asked was, who has the second best odds of leading the position in fantasy points? And it's not Jefferson for me. It's not Lamb. And I actually believe this, maybe not necessarily who I would take second, but second best odds of leading the position. I would go with Puka Nacua. You look at in games, full games last year, over 40% snap share. He averaged 105 yards per game. That would have led the position. By fantasy points per route run, it was second best ever of any wide receiver in fantasy points data history. We saw what Cooper Kupp did in 2021. I think Nacua could go nuclear, regardless of.
I'll allow it.
We'll workshop it. We'll workshop it.
We're working out. Regardless of Matthew Stafford's health, I really think that's just like a McVay thing. And then, because you gave like a more off the wall one and Nico, I would say Tyreek probably has like the 6th or 7th best odds of leading the position in fantasy points. You're not going to draft him anywhere near that high, but he has that upside. And so to me, he's a really interesting play. Like, you look at the Vegas odds, he has the 6th or 7th best odds of leading the position in receiving yards, but his receiving yardage over under adds up to like 18th or 19th best at the position. And he's like wide receiver 16 by ADP. And so, me, I lean into upside. I think he's a really interesting value in round 3 of your drafts.
I think all the Dolphins are. Can I give you the anti-Puka argument? By the way, I love Puka. I literally just drafted him in a guillotine league. Like, I'm in on Puka. But the counter argument, just to play devil's advocate here, is that there's certainly a scenario, of course, because we've seen it with Cooper Kupp, we've seen it with Puka and stretches where he goes nuclear, Puklier. But I think that's better. I think Puklier is better.
Puklier is better. I agree.
Yeah, thank you, Theo. But the concern is first off, he's dealt with injury histories throughout his NFL career.
In college career.
Yep. He's dealt with injuries. You've got Stafford with a back. You say, I'm not worried about it, but I'm sorry, but like, Stafford to Jimmy Garoppolo is a drop-off. It is.
For fantasy, I don't know. Just because I think Jimmy G, just like the short area of the field, good accuracy there.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. It's the same thing we're talking about Daniels.
I mean, you're right.
Is he a competent NFL quarterback? Sure. But like, Stafford, forget fantasy for a second. Stafford's still one of like the 6 best quarterbacks in the NFL. He can make all the throws. Like,
sure.
Huh?
Arm talent? Yeah. Top 6 arm talent.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, and then the other thing is like, so the concerns are Puka's health, Stafford's health. And then I feel like, by the way, you want to talk about value. Like, I feel like everyone is sleeping on Devontae Adams. Wherever Devontae Adams is gone, whether, and I know a lot of it's been with Aaron Rodgers, but like Davante Adams is like a 30% target share every year of his career, right? Like, I don't think has he ever been below like 28%? Like, he is somebody who earns targets at an incredibly high level. And so now, and by the way, they paid him. They paid him. And so maybe he's not going to breakfast with Stafford every morning, but you're telling me Davante Adams ain't going to get fed? Of course he is. And it's super weird to me that Nacua is like a top 5 wide receiver and that Adams is basically like a top, he's like going as like, barely top 20 overall. Like he's going somewhere like in this, I feel like their ADPs are kind of wacky for the level of talent that I feel like they should be closer. You think about the years of with like the Puka and Cup, like I feel like they're much closer than where their current ADPs are, and that Adams is probably the value on the Rams this year. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think that's a great point. I should have said we are extremely high on both wide receivers.
Okay.
And so just look at last year. Remember how many games Cooper Kupp missed, how many games Puka missed, and Kupp dying at the tail end of last year. And only the Bengals wide receivers scored more fantasy points than the Rams wide receivers. In each of the last 2 years, you had Puka top 5 in XFP per game and Kupp top 12 in XFP per game when healthy. And so, yeah, we have right now Davante Adams wide receiver 15. We have Puka Nacua wide receiver 2. These are Chris Weck's projections. These are not mine. I would, in my rankings, I'm hedging a little bit more for injury. I will say I had Adams written up as a clear value. I changed that because of the Stafford injury, where I'm just a big believer in QB rapport and chemistry. And then the fact that they've only had 2 practices working together, whereas Stafford obviously has a ton of chemistry with Nacua, makes me a little bit more nervous. But in terms of like best ball values, I don't think it gets much better than Davante Adams. So I think you're right there. And again, I'm not taking Nacua second overall, but odds to finish first at the position, I like that a lot.
No, yeah, your point is just, does he have the talent, quarterback, and situation that if things break right, he leads the league in fantasy points at wide receiver? Of course, 100%. It's within the range of outcomes for sure.
For me, Lamb is the wide receiver 2, and I have him as a top 4 overall pick in PPR. But the one that I'm worried about, that I think you want to have exposure to, especially if you're in a lot of leagues, that could burn everyone, is Malik Nabers. Because Malik Nabers, I think, could be a 200 target player. And at the end of the day, targets are such a driver, where Nabers is such a special talent, broke so many metrics at Fantasy Points data, and he's just sort of in that range where we've had league winners in back-to-back years, with Lamb 2 years ago, Saquon last year, and now Nabers just sort of living in those last 3 picks in the first round. So really a fun year at the wide receiver position. And this was an awesome episode with you, Matthew, like really, really fun. Let everybody know what you have going on for the next couple of weeks and what do you have going on during the season.
So, over obviously at fantasylife.com, come check us out. We have a lot of great tools that I think people will like. We offer Fantasy Life Plus as well. Our draft champion tool, I think people really are excited about. So whatever you play, whether it's, best ball, DFS, season long, guillotine leagues, we have it for you. There's a bunch of free stuff as well, including a free email. I send out a free email every single day, me and my team. You can go to fantasylife.com and sign up for that. If you don't like it, just unsubscribe. It's that easy. But also I'll mention guillotineleagues.com. It's a weekly elimination style format game that is incredibly fun. If you've never heard of it, please go try a league at guillotineleagues.com. It's free to play. We also have paid leagues, but very simply, you draft a team like normal, you start a team like normal, you have your league, but at the end of the week, the team with the lowest score in the league gets chopped, cut, dead, killed forever. And you just keep doing that until one team remains. So it's an unbelievable sweat. You do that throughout the season. The other big twist is that the team that gets eliminated, all the players on their team go back into the free agent pool. And you've got $1,000 fab over the course of the season to bid on those players. So it's week 6 and like Jamar Chase and, Trey McBride are on the waiver wire. Like it's crazy. So it just makes it a lot of fun, and the strategy gets different as the league gets smaller and you're dealing with more super teams, and just it's a fascinating way. to play. Everyone that I've ever introduced it to says, "Oh my God, regular fantasy football is dead to me." So I loved it so much I bought the company. So Fantasy Life owns guillotineleagues.com. And so I, appreciate everyone watching this to check it out, try it out, get your regular league to do it. It's not replacing a regular fantasy league, but I think you'll enjoy playing there quite a bit. And then on NBC side, we do a daily show, Fantasy Football Happy Hour. We do it live on YouTube, noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. It's available on demand on YouTube. Runs at 5:00 on Peacock, and then of course wherever you get your podcast. So we do that as well. And then Sundays during the football season, I'll do fantasy football pregame, 11 a.m. to 1, which is both on Peacock and YouTube, live on YouTube from 11 to 1 on Sundays. I'm part of Football Night in America, of course. I'll be in Philadelphia for the opening game of the season on the sidelines there for Cowboys Eagles. Then we've got Bills Ravens Sunday night. Great season coming up on Football Night in American Sunday Night Football. Of course, we've got the Super Bowl this year. And so, I think that's about it. And then, of course, my weekly rankings on rotoworld.com. So check out all my written work at NBCsports.com or rotoworld.com. I think those are all the plugs.
And
rotopass.com. We got rotopass.com, which is a great bundle site. Includes Fantasy Life Plus and Peacock codes and a bunch of other sites that are fantastic. So you can check that out at rotopass.com. It's a great bundle. It's the best bargain on the internet.
Scott, what do you have going on for these next 2 weeks?
That's
a hard one.
Not
Matthew,
much in comparison, apparently.
Hard to go second on that one. Yeah,
just religiously updating my draft guide, doing the School of Scott podcast. Something crazy is coming to Fantasy Points. I think next week. I'll just tease it and leave it at that, but something crazy coming next week. So be on the lookout for your email and my Twitter page and the Fantasy Points Twitter account. Something crazy.
Yeah, no, we're really excited about that one. And this was an awesome show. Make sure you're sticking with us for all of our podcasts, Dynasty Life, Fantasy Football Daily. Check out my most recent Fantasy Football Daily with Coach Beak Index, Greg Branos. He joined me. And then Scott Barrett and I drafting the FFPC main event. We're going to see you soon. And stick with us here at Fantasy Points. We're going to help you crush your leagues this season.